Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. It was 700 hours. It was time to leave the house. Stephen carefully stepped out into the hallway so as not to wake his mother, who had the only day off in the last week and a half. In the semi-darkness, Stephen looked for a brush to shine his shoes. "Why don't you turn on a light? Why are you walking in the dark?" Stephen twitched. His mother stood in the doorway in surprise, dressed in a terry cloth robe. It was obvious from her face that she hadn't had a good night's sleep and was probably torn with her son. "Jesus, Mom!" shrieked Stephen, theatrically clutching at his heart. "Why scare you in the dark?" "Because I didn't want yours, but something got in the way. But apparently it was me who woke you up. You're giving me a hard time. You should get married." "Mom, stop raising your voice a little," objected Stephen. "If you want me to move out, just tell me so." "Well, go on. That's not the point. I'd be happy to have you live with me forever. You're not really 20 years old anymore, are you?" "No. I should have a family by now. Or at least a girlfriend. All I have on my mind right now is my thesis. Okay, I gotta go. I have to teach my first class. I don't want the teacher to be late." "Well, you might want to think about it. I've got one." Stephen didn't want to listen to his mom and quickly ran out of the apartment. He was tired of listening to such conversations. For the last year and a half, his mother often started them. At first, the young man did not pay attention to them. After all, every mother sooner or later talks about marriage or marriage. However, Camille turned out to be a more persistent woman than she seemed to her son. Almost every day, she told Stephen directly that he was lonely. And if her son didn't do something about it in the near future, he would be left with his nose to the grindstone. Maybe she's right about something. "I've never been in a serious relationship. I spent all my time studying," he thought to himself during his mother's fiery speeches. Stephen was a stocky brunette with blue eyes. As soon as he was born, everyone around him said that girls would chase after him. The people around him were right. However, the guy did not pay any attention to this. Since childhood, he was attracted to books on the world around him, classic fiction. Playing soccer with boys in the yard is not for him. But he still had to go out, as Mom insisted on taking sunbaths and daily told about the benefits of fresh air. These few hours were hard. Stephen tried to pretend he was having fun. He kept in touch with the boys. And the time spent socializing with his peers, Stephen always regretted. Since there was a sea at home, read books that his father brought him when he came from business trips. Christopher, Stephen's dad, is a lifelong engineer at an aircraft factory. He is considered a valuable member of the workforce, so management often sends him to other plants for training. Camille and Christopher lived together for 12 years. This time was the happiest for Stephen, despite the increasing quarrels of his parents. As a child, he did not pay much attention to it. However, as a teenager, after every time he heard his mother screaming, he felt as if a knife had pierced his heart. Stephen realized that the divorce would not pass. He dreamed of staying with his father afterward, as there was something more than father-son love that bound him to him. Christopher, as well as Stephen, was crazy about reading books. Every week he would bring 5 new works into the house. For some people, that might have been enough for a month or two. However, Stephen's father would devour the books he brought in within 4 days. The salesman in the bookstores thought he didn't work. That's why he read so much. That was not the case. Christopher worked 8-10 o'clock a.m. jobs at the company. He'd come home, help his wife with the housework. He didn't have any personal time until after the sun went down. Reading took up a lot of time he could have spent sleeping. But sleep, as they say, is for wimps. Stephen still remembers getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, walking down the corridor, and in the far room modestly burning Boss. Dad read until 3-4 o'clock. Of course, he didn't get much sleep, but his favorite occupation helped him to relax after a hard day's work and the next scandals with Camille. As a child, Stephen tried to understand why books attracted his father so much. When he asked him what was so fascinating about them, his father handed him a book by Jack London called Hearts of Three. Stephen did not want to read this work because he thought it was written for girls since it had the word hearts in the title. He overpowered himself. He came home after school, did his homework, and opened the book. Jack London's world sucked the boy in so much that he lost track of time. By 12 o'clock at night, he found that he had already read 2/3 of the work. He was eager to find out how the story would end. However, a shout from his mother at the other end of the house, who saw the light in his room, made it clear that it was time to go to bed. From then on, Christopher began to buy not 5 but 10 books a week. Camille did not welcome such a hobby, as she believed that the money spent could have been used for home improvements, upcoming renovations, the purchase of her personal car. But also, after all, the money should be given to her mother. Only she would know how to handle it. Yes, that's exactly what she thought. When the divorce began, Stephen was invited into the courtroom, asked who he wanted to stay with. Naturally, the boy, without hesitation, admitted that he would be more comfortable being with his father after he expressed his opinion. He was escorted out of the room where the meeting was taking place. Stephen was not worried, as he was confident that the judge would listen to him. When the hearing was over, the doors opened, and he saw his mother's happy face. Behind her walked Christopher, looking him in the eye. Stephen understood everything. It turns out that his mother has provided the judge with irrefutable evidence that it is better for her son to be with her, and only she knows how to properly build him a happy future. After this turn of events, Stephen was depressed. However, he came to terms with the decision. His father promised that he would visit him, often taking him for weekend sleepovers. This was the only thing that gave the boy strength. The years went by. Dad kept his word, despite the fact that it had been more than 15 years since the divorce. Christopher called his son every day, asking how he was doing. These conversations were a real outlet for Stephen. In them, they shared their opinions about the books they had read, and also recommended each other new works to familiarize themselves with modern literature. Because of the fact that the boy was fond of reading, Camille was afraid that he would enter the philological faculty or a higher education institution, the direction of which is devoted to the study of literature. It was a surprise to everyone that Stephen decided to follow in his father's footsteps. It cannot be said that he had no trouble getting into the first year of the best institute in the city. However, luck was on his side. Applicants with the highest scores chose other educational institutions, so Stephen got on the lists of people on the budget-based training. The first 2 courses were easy for him, as there were a lot of general subjects, and when the 3rd year began, Stephen realized that it would be difficult, but he was ready for everything. It was Christopher who helped him to keep his spirits up throughout his studies. He supported him in every way he could. When Stephen was down and his father saw it, he would call him to his workplace and show him in detail what he was going to do when he graduated. Camille was not thrilled with her son's choice of profession. She thought that he should have chosen a more promising specialty, such as programming. After all, in her opinion, people there do nothing and shovel money. Stephen's mother worked in the beauty industry, making women irresistible, before attending an important event, as well as emphasized their beauty in everyday life. She worked as a makeup stylist, did hairstyles, makeup. The whole working day she spent on her feet, from which she was very tired. But she liked to feel useful and needed. Despite the fact that she was constantly surrounded by friends and her son, she was always lonely, although she did not admit it to anyone. So she tried to work without days off, and only when the pain in her legs became unbearably strong. She would take a vacation, but no more than 1 day. Because of this rigid working schedule, Camille Stephen managed to do everything during the day. After school, he would come home, do his homework, cook dinner, and spend time reading books. At the institute, he seemed close to everyone, so he had few friends. Stephen did not regret it, because he thought that there was nothing to talk about with these people, as they were only interested in partying and parties. Stephen's personal life was also going downhill. No, he wasn't a virgin. He had a couple one-night stands with girls he didn't know very well. It wasn't done out of love, just to drown his physiological needs. He wanted to find his love. But things were the same as with friends. The girls were only interested in expensive travel gifts of self-development. They clearly didn't want to engage. Why didn't they arouse interest in Stephen? After successfully completing the master's program, Stephen decided that he would continue his studies and enrolled in graduate school. Well established himself among the teaching staff. The guy was entrusted with conducting some disciplines. He liked to spend time with students. He paid enough attention to each of them to make them understand the subject and successfully pass the exam in the future. That day, after talking to his mother about the urgent need to get married, Stephen had to conduct the first pair in the subject of electrical engineering for Camille. The young man was 10 minutes late for the pair. By this time, all the students were in the assembly. They were very fond of the subjects that the young man was conducting. After the roll call was conducted, the young instructor noticed that there was one girl present in the classroom who was not on the list. He asked her to introduce herself and then found out that she had transferred to this group from another major. She was a fragile girl with big blue eyes, mustache, and hair. She stood out from the rest of the group. Therefore, Stephen figured she would have a hard time. As the pair came to the end of the class, the students thanked the instructor and scattered to go about their business on break. After Stephen collected all his materials from his desk into his briefcase, he noticed that the new girl was still in the classroom. "Stephen, hello. My name is Smith Emily." With shyness in her voice, said the student. "Good afternoon," smiled and answered the teacher, Smith Emily. "I am glad to welcome you to our group. Of course, it seems strange to me that you decided to transfer in the middle of the school year. I think it's going to be difficult for you." "Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I realize I missed a few classes, and I can't hide the fact that it was really hard for me right now. I didn't understand anything. Therefore, I would like to ask you to recommend me some literature that would allow me to catch up." At that moment, Emily put her purse on the table, opened it, and began to look for her daily planner. While Stephen was thinking about which method books to recommend to the student, he watched her every move and noticed that there were error search markers in the bag. "Are you interested in drawing?" the teacher inquired. "What? Oh yeah, you know, it's a real passion of mine. I have been drawing as long as I can remember. Can I see your works?" Emily did not refuse the teacher, despite the fact that her works were somewhat frank. The student confidently handed Stephen her beach sketch. The young man was at first embarrassed by the student's candid work, but continued to familiarize himself with her work. The spreads depicted nude and semi-nude, nude, male and female bodies, mostly without faces. All the reading lines and reliefs were done so filigree that Stephen could not think that the author of these works is a girl who is not yet 25. "You know, they are very beautiful works." Continuing to look, Stephen said, "I can't understand one thing, how you ended up in engineering." "Oh, Stephen, it's all very complicated. My father wanted me to get a good profession that would bring me a lot of money in the future. I don't like to argue with him. So I went to your institute." "What do you mean, our institute?" "But it's just that my home is 150 kilometers away. From here I decided that it is better to leave my parents' house, to study at the university as my father wants, and to do my favorite business. Like I want to do." Yes, I understand you." As no one else smiling, said Stephen. After a short conversation with the new student, the young teacher dictated to her a list of teaching aids that would help her to understand the essence of the subject faster. At this, the young people said goodbye. Emily went to the next pair, and Stephen went to the department, where he was preparing for the next lecture. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. The young man excused himself and went home. On the way, he stopped by a bookstore where he bought 2 new detectives. Stephen was in a great hurry, as he dreamed of starting reading as soon as possible. After all, it was these books that caused a great stir among the population of the whole planet. Opening the door to the apartment, He noticed that on the threshold there were 2 pairs of women's shoes, which his mother did not have. Apparently, she had visitors. "Mom, hi. I'm not hungry. I'll go to my room. I bought new books. I'll read." "Oh, Sashenka, we've been waiting for you. Why did you take so long?" Out of breath, Mother asked. "I had to replace Rick, who got sick. The students have exams coming up, so they can't miss classes. God, but you don't take care of yourself at all. Come on, I'd better introduce you to someone." Camille took Stephen by the hand and led him into the kitchen. When he crossed the threshold, he noticed a smartly set table where 2 women were sitting. One of them was about 45 years old, and the other was apparently her daughter, because he gave her a look no older than 21. Stephen immediately realized what was going on. Despite this, he was in shock, because his mother had never allowed herself such antics before. "I don't get it. Is this matchmaking? Are we living in the 19th century? Son, can you believe it? Evelyn just happened to be walking by our house with her daughter Jenna. We ran into each other in the driveway when I was coming back from the store. Evelyn is an old friend of mine. I'd really like you to meet her," Camille said without making a show of it. It didn't bother her that there was some confusion on her son's face. "Hello, Evelyn. Nice to meet you. Jenna, my respects." At that moment, Stephen pretended to take off his hat. Camille was shocked by this prank. Her son had always had good manners, and what had happened to him now was beyond her comprehension. The woman quickly came to her senses and continued to steer the conversation in the right direction. Jenna sat with the man at the table. It was immediately obvious that she was not happy about this turn of events either. However, the simplicity of the young man helped her to relax and enjoy the conversation. After looking around the table, Stephen concluded that his mother had put a lot of effort and spent a lot of money to prepare all these exquisite dishes. He had no other choice, so he sat down at the table and started talking to his guest. "Stephen, Evelyn, you can imagine. Jenna graduated from medical school this year. She was going to enter the institute. However, at a family council, they decided that the best medical training happens abroad. So Camille and Wendy decided that Jenna would go to medical school in Germany. Yes, they did. But I realized that Evelyn and Wendy had decided. I'm interested in a different question, and Jenna agrees with their decision," Stephen asked, shifting his eyes to the girl. "Yes, of course. Stephen, can you imagine what opportunities will open up before me? It's the most advanced technology out there. Pharmaceutical companies annually release hundreds of new drugs that allow you to fight diseases. People with cancer are successfully treated abroad, while in Russia patients die for lack of quality treatment. My dad is the best oncologist in the region. I am very interested in what he does. Our whole family is medical professionals. My mom works with kids. She's a pediatrician. So anyway, I get it. My mom found me not just a bride, but a good match. We're definitely in the 19th century," Stephen thought to himself. The conversation lasted until about 2 o'clock. During this time, Camille managed to tell all the background of her son, and also to show a picture of him as a little boy, lying with a bare butt. Stephen found it difficult to control his emotions. However, he managed to do it. During the meal, the young man saw that in the eyes of Evelyn and her daughter Jenna there is interest, which increases with every minute spent in this house. At one point, Camille called Evelyn into the room to show her collection of house flowers. Of course, this was all done intentionally to leave Stephen and Jenna alone. This made the young man feel even more awkward than when he came home and discovered his guests. The girl started talking about herself, how much she wanted to help people, about how she likes to spend her free time with her friends in cafes or clubs. Stephen had mixed feelings about it. The girl was not stupid. It was hard for him to understand how such a desire to study could intersect with the constant partying in her life. Speech. Jenna was coherent and literate. She had clear thoughts in her head, interesting plans for her life. Yes, she was undoubtedly not the type that usually surrounded Stephen. Despite this, the guy did not feel any attraction to this girl at all. The bulk of the time while the young people were alone, Jenna spoke. Sometimes she realized that she was becoming too much, and she began to ask Stephen questions. Mostly they were questions about his personal life. It made him uncomfortable because that was the life he had been counting and didn't have. He struggled to get out of awkward situations, answered uncomfortable questions, and secretly wished it would all be over as quickly as possible. Late in the afternoon, Evelyn and Jenna started to head home. The prospective mother-in-law showered Stephen with many compliments. In doing so, she hinted to her daughter that she had an enviable groom standing in front of her. In her opinion, he was promising because he was the son of a famous engineer. Stephen thanked the guests for the pleasant conversation, smiled, and escorted them to the door. "What do you think?" It was immediately clear from his mother's voice that she thought everything had gone well. "I'll tell you what I think about the fact that you, without consulting me, arranged this viewing. Why was that necessary? And more importantly, who needed it? What makes you think you can decide for me?" Did Stephen sound anxious and irritable? "Son, I've had 1,000,000 conversations about how it's time for you to get married, but you do nothing. How long can I wait? Do you realize that if things continue like this, I won't have grandchildren at all? I don't want anyone to call me grandmother, but I'd love to see our family continue." "Mom, what lineage are you talking about? Don't you understand? To start a family, you have to meet someone who makes your heart respond. You can't do things the way you've arranged them today. In your opinion, if a man is promising, then he's worthy of continuing the so-called lineage." "Of course I do. What else could it be, son? You wanted a son. I will never let that happen. Who's gonna ask you? I'm almost 30 years old. I'm in a position to decide who I start a family with and when, much less have children." Stephen realized that a dialogue with his mother would not lead to anything good. Camille was in no mood for any kind of compromise, and this family needed it because she considered her son too infantile, unable to build a successful and rich life. "Look, Stephen, two parents should have a perfect set of genes when it comes to procreation. You have to choose your mate responsibly. It will be difficult for you to get married now because, as you said yourself, you are almost 30 years old." Mother's tone has changed. It's as if she's become much calmer, thus misleading. "I don't see you thanking me for having dinner tonight with such distinguished people of our town. You should be happy that I found you an educated prospective bride who is just over 20 years old. You know what that means? That she can give you a healthy baby. Every year it's harder for a woman to carry a fetus to term. The likelihood of genetic diseases increases. Have you thought about that?" To be honest, Stephen was on the edge. He just didn't know what to do or how to end this pointless conversation. He knew that his mother could only back off on one condition, and that was that he had to agree with her. "Lady, you know, I hadn't really thought of that. You're probably right. Jenna's a really nice girl. Maybe I should consider her for a fiancé." He wasn't going to do that, of course. However, that answer completely satisfied Camille, who broke out into a blissful smile. On her face was the expression of a victor after a difficult and bloody battle. That was partly what this dialogue was. "I'm glad, sweetheart, that you have at least one bright thought in your head. Mommy knows what's best for you. You have to trust your mom. You won't regret this choice." "Jesus, what choice is she talking about? I was just saying we could consider why she thinks the choice is already made. I've dragged myself to the bottom, and it's going to be extremely difficult to get out." These were the thoughts that were swirling around in Stephen's head. For now he remained silent and smiled, hoping that his mother would now go to get ready for bed. The young man thought that after all that had happened, he would fall asleep somewhere on the way to the bed. His body prayed, leaden eyelids heavier, his consciousness drifting off somewhere far away. However, it only turned out to be a defensive reaction to everything that had happened. Stephen's body was fighting back as best it could, giving him these signals. When he reached the bed, the young man came to the conclusion that Jenna was not the heroine of his novel. For a second, he felt sad that there was no girl in his life who could attract his attention. Despite the constant support of his father, Stephen would very much like to be loved, pitied, and supported when he comes home. Ideally, all of this should have been done by his mother, but she was preoccupied with other matters. At some point, Stephen realized that the image of Smith and Emily was popping up in his mind. Partly he felt sorry for her because she wasn't doing what she would have wanted to do at the Institute. Her work in sketchbook was really good and deserved the attention of others. He was sure that Emily had some large-sized paintings in her arsenal, painted in colors rather than markers. When his thoughts turned from the matchmaking he had constructed to the new student, he calmed down. His body relaxed as much as possible. The brain cleared of heavy thoughts, and Stephen drifted into sleep. The next day, he had to go to work by 12 o'clock. So the young man managed to get a good night's sleep. Stephen woke up to the fact that the sun's rays began to break through the curtain. The sun was playing across his bed, getting rays in his eyes. Upon waking up, the young man noticed that his mother was not at home. This was good news for him, because he could spend the morning in complete peace, have breakfast, prepare for the upcoming lectures, check the students' work that he had to check yesterday. As he passed by the hallway, he noticed a couple of books that had been bought yesterday. He felt a little sad because he had dreamed to start reading them yesterday. But because of everything that had happened, it would have to wait until tonight. Unless Camille comes up with something else interesting. Stephen didn't make it to the bus stop on time, so he missed the bus. The intervals between transportation were long, so he had to call a cab. After selling the car for 15 minutes, he jumped into it, gave the driver the address of the university, and relaxed. There were surprisingly quite a lot of cars in the city today, even though it was a regular weekday with no holiday dates ahead. But still, the streets were filled with people, on whose faces a certain puzzled look appeared on Stephen's face when it was only 350 meters to the university. The cab in which he was traveling became stuck in traffic. Looking out of the window, the young man noticed a small accident that took up one lane of traffic. There was an adjuster standing on the road helping the traffic flow. He immediately realized that if he stayed in the car, he would be late for the lecture. So Stephen took cash out of his wallet, gave it to the driver, and said goodbye. Jumping out of the car, he looked at his watch. He was only 15 minutes away from the lecture he was supposed to be giving. It was only 15 minutes away. He shoved his briefcase under his arm and ran as fast as he could. On the way, he had to push people who were clearly not in a hurry to get to class. He even saw his students among them. He wanted to shout something encouraging. Maybe they would rush to the upcoming lecture after that. When Stephen turned towards the students, there was a violent collision. The young man managed to stay on his feet, but he noticed a girl lying on the pavement. Markers and sketches of drawings had fallen out of her bag and were lying on the pavement. Stephen immediately realized that it was Smith Emily. Everyone around them froze. At first, it was not clear whether the girl was conscious or not. The young teacher ran up to Emily. At that moment, she began to rise. Everyone exhaled, including Stephen. "Oh my God. Emily, you're all right. Can you tell me what hurts? Should I see a doctor or call an ambulance?" "Fuck the ambulance. By the time they get here, you might bleed to death. I'll take a cab to the hospital." "Stephen, calm down. What are you, like an elephant in a china shop?" "I can't say I'm all right. My knees are very sore." At that moment, Emily raised the hem of her dress a little. From there showed slender, graceful calves and knees that were shattered all over. A new colored blood started from them. Stephen's heart clenched. He was deeply ashamed. Without thinking, he gathered up all the markers and sketches, put them in Emily's bag, picked her up on his arm, and ran as fast as he could. On the way, he wondered where to take Emily. The girl at this moment was very much surprised, but could not utter a word. If it had been an ordinary person, and not her teacher, she would have started screaming, swearing, fighting. but how to behave in this situation that had developed, and she had no idea. Running up to the institute, Stephen, with Emily in his arms, climbed the stairs and turned in the direction of the infirmary. Its doors were closed. Stephen was angry. He could barely contain himself from swearing at the whole institute. "Emily, do you have a nail stick?" You could hear in his voice that he was holding back his rage. The girl was discouraged by such a question, as she couldn't understand why he needed it. Sawing nails didn't seem like a good time. "Yes, of course there is. Here you go." Stephen took Emily's wand and headed towards the castle. Fortunately, it turned out to be the easiest. It could be opened with a single movement of the hand. Entering the infirmary, Stephen rushed to find hydrogen peroxide, absorbent cotton, and bandages. Emily all this time stood dumbfounded by the sight, on the threshold of which she could not cross. When Stephen had everything he needed in his hands, he turned to the girl. "Why are you standing there? Come in. I'll treat your wounds." "Stephen, thank you, of course, but I could have waited for the nurse to come back. Or, at the very least, I can treat my own knees." Stephen's expression changed immediately. He didn't like to say the same thing twice. So he walked confidently toward the girl, took her in his arms, carried her into the medical center, and sat her on the couch. "Stephen, but really, I can handle it myself. Emily, please sit quietly. I'm responsible for what happened. I have to make it up to you somehow. If you think I have a beef with you, you're mistaken. You didn't deliberately run at me, I hope. If it had been intentional, I'd classify you as a peculiar person. But you're a decent man, a teacher. I realize you were just late, so you were in a hurry, not looking around. Please leave it alone. I'll work on my own wounds." Stephen looked sternly at the student, knelt down in front of her so that he could clearly see the injuries and help revive them as soon as possible. He knew how to administer first aid, so this did not cause him any difficulty. The whole process took no more than 5 minutes. When he was done, he raised his head to look at Emily. A wide smile was visible on her face. "Emily, do you feel better?" "To be honest, Stephen, not really." "Then why are you smiling?" "I just noticed that when you were treating my knee with hydrogen peroxide and then smearing it with green, you were blowing on my knee like it was the most precious thing in your life." "Well, maybe not the most precious, but the most beautiful," Stephen thought, stretched into a smile. "Emily, it's just that I cause you a lot of trouble and pain. I tried very hard to make sure the procedure didn't cause you any discomfort. I hope I did the right thing, so that when you see me, you won't be reminded of this horrible incident." We exchanged a few words. The young people noticed that they were already 30 minutes late for their class. To keep the rumors from spreading around the school, Stephen sent Smith Emily first. When she left, the young man gathered all his things, left the office, and was about to close the door so that the nurse, who would soon be back in place, would not notice anything. I'm embarrassed to ask, what's going on here? Out of consternation, the nail squirrel he had taken from Emily fell out of Stephen's hands. Turning around, he noticed a stout adult woman in a white coat standing in front of him. It was obvious that she was a nurse. Stephen tried to think of a story that would make the woman feel comfortable with Emily's blood on the cuffs of his shirt. It was a good excuse to tell the nurse, a heart-wrenching situation that had his blood pressure rising. His nose was bleeding, and the staff at the nurse's station was not on site. By the look on the woman's face, you could tell right away that she didn't really believe the story. But she had little choice if she'd made a scandal of it. And the young man's bleeding was real. She could have been fired for leaving her workplace waving him off. She let him go. Stephen ran into the auditorium like a sunburned man. A look of surprise was written on the faces of the students. Occasional chuckles were heard around the auditorium. The young instructor was embarrassed for his students to witness this horror of a low embarrassment with Emily Smith. He had no choice but to pretend as if nothing had happened. In today's lecture, he was extremely serious. This was unusual for the students because Stephen was usually known around the institute for his good sense of humor, loyalty, and kindness. When the class was over, Stephen turned his back to the students and told them they were free to go. He was very embarrassed about what had happened before class. He did not turn around until the footsteps in the classroom stopped. When he was convinced that the students had left the room, he turned around, hoping that he would be getting ready now. To his surprise, standing in front of the faculty table was Smith, Emily with her big blue eyes. She looked at Stephen. "Later, Emily, I am so embarrassed. You will please forgive me again for everything. Why did you stay in the auditorium? I can help you with something." "Stephen, stop worrying. It's all behind you now, especially since you did a very professional job on my knee." At that moment, both Emily and Stephen smiled sincerely at each other, which made both of them uncomfortable. "So anyway, what can I do for you? You know, I've never acted like this in my life. There's something I'd like to tell you more than anything. I don't know how you're gonna react to it, but still." Stephen's heart was pumping at a frantic pace. He didn't understand what was happening to him and why this student bothered him so much. Emily lowered her eyes to the floor, took a deep breath, and said, "Stephen, would you like to invite me in for a cup of coffee?" "What? So it's just like that? What makes her think I'd even want to ask her out? I don't know if I would or not. Who am I kidding? Emily, this is very sudden. And yet I have to ask you if it bothers you that you're a student and I'm a teacher. I'm almost 10 years older than you." "Oh no, it doesn't bother me at all. I just feel like you and I are soulmates. I'd like to get to know you as well as I can. I don't insist that we must have a relationship, just a chat." After these words, Emily's appearance was so innocent that Stephen could not refuse her. To tell the truth, he himself would like to get to know his student better. Even though the rules of the university contradicted it, Stephen looked at the girl with a bewildered look, and at some point realized that an idiotic smile was shining on his face. Quickly switching from Emily to his notes, he took 3 deep breaths, which, according to psychological practice, promised to bring calmness. "To be honest, this is very unexpected, I'll admit to you. I do feel, as you do, that we have much in common. So I'd love to invite you in for a cup of coffee or tea, whichever you prefer. But here's the thing. I don't get off until 7:00 p.m. every day. That's not a problem. Then I suggest we meet at 8:00 at the entrance to the city park. There's a good coffee shop nearby. The coffee's really good, and so are the desserts. It's great. I'd really like desserts. I look forward to seeing you again. Bye." After saying that, the girl turned around and left, with a quick limp. Stephen, it was very painful to look at her. He kept blaming himself for what he had done. In his mind, it seemed as if he had agreed to this meeting only because he was the one responsible for her broken knees. He wanted to do as many nice things for this girl as possible that would help make up for his guilt. Toward the end of the workday, the young man sat in the department and checked the students' papers. There was no one around. In his head, there were some rambling thoughts that distracted him from his work. Because of this, he had to check the control papers several times to find mistakes that were not detected at the first check. This feeling was new to him. His heart was failing him too. No, it wasn't aching. It was pounding at a frantic pace. It seemed to him that if anyone else were in the office, he would hear his heartbeat, which sounded like a drum solo in his head. He put his left hand to his chest. It seemed to him that it would make things better. Stephen was confused. Pens and pencils were falling out of his hands. Maybe I have poems by a chord and I never knew. I should ask for an excuse to go to the dean's office and make a doctor's appointment. His hand was already reaching for the work first aid kit to take a Validol or Corvalol. Just in time, he remembered he had a date with Emily. What date? Am I crazy? It's just a meeting. We're just gonna talk, have coffee, and I have to pay for it. I have to pay for her, but she might see it as a date. Stephen realized that he couldn't cope with the excitement and this new feeling, so he decided to quit. After all, he'd have time to check the tests tomorrow morning. It was early 8 o'clock on the clock. Time to move out. Stephen collected all the student work, his notes and briefcase, listed in front of the mirror, and went to the exit. In the corridor met the dean, who detained him. Their conversation about upcoming competitions and grants took over 20 minutes. Because of this, Stephen was catastrophically late for his meeting with Emily. The young man hailed a cab, which arrived 5 minutes later. Jumping into the car, he gave the driver the address and leaned back in the back seat. The closer he drove to the city park, the more his heartbeat increased. Stephen absent-mindedly considered the possibility that he was really sick. When he got out of the car, Emily was already waiting for him near the entrance to the park. With each step, he found it harder to breathe. It was getting harder. His heart was pounding harder and harder. At some point, his throat lumped up, and he couldn't even say hello to the girl. He had to react quickly. So instead of the usual greeting, he extended his right hand to the girl, and with his left hand he pretended to take off his hat. This made Emily laugh a lot. As she started up in a golden laugh, Stephen noticed that he was relieved. Stephen and Emily headed deeper into the park along the center avenue. For the first few minutes, they walked in complete silence, which made them both feel awkward. At some point, the girl began to talk about her hobbies. Stephen was very pleased with the fact that she liked to read books. As it turned out, young people have the same tastes. They almost simultaneously read all the novelties that appear in the bookstore. In addition, Emily told how she began to engage in drawing. Stephen did not hear anything original, but this did not prevent him from listening to the girl with interest since childhood. Emily liked to draw with pencils, colors with felt-tip pens. Sometimes there was not even enough paper for all her masterpieces, which she produced in a day. That's why the little girl used as a canvas everything she could get her hands on: documents, curtains, mirrors, windows, and even bed linen. Emily told her life stories with such a childlike sincerity, which instantly allowed her to draw the young teacher to her. All the while, a smile never left Stephen's face. It had been a long time since he had felt so good. One could even say that he was happy, really happy. He felt as if he had not lived before, but existed. He couldn't get out of his head why he was attracted to this girl. It could not be said that she was some kind of model appearance. After all, according to the stories of friends, this is what they pay attention to when meeting the opposite sex. Stephen was pleased to listen to Emily. He did not want to interrupt her. The last thing he wanted was for this evening to end. The young man realized that sooner or later he would have to talk and tell something about himself, and she was waiting for that. But he dared not interrupt Emily and tell her about his life. And what did he have to tell about how he lived with his mother in a 3-room apartment in the center of the city? How his mother wouldn't let him take a step without her permission. He was ashamed. He didn't want Emily to get the impression that he was a mama's boy. He wasn't. He tried to fight the matriarchy in the house, but he wasn't very good at it. And instead of the sweet feeling of victory after an argument with his mother, he constantly felt guilty. Especially when Camille clutched at her heart and screamed that Stephen was trying to drive her to her grave. God, I don't even have anything to say about my life. After 2 o'clock, it started to get colder outside, so the young people decided to stop by the coffee shop Stephen had talked about during the day. They were both surprised that their orders were the same: Cocoa and Napoleon. Were you peeking at my order? Emily shrieked sharply, theatrically putting her hands at her sides. No, you were watching me, young lady, replied Stephen, laughing. Laughing, Stephen replied. I'm not. Where did you find a young lady? I'm a grown-up, independent, and self-sufficient woman. Of course, my father didn't want me to move so far away from my parents' home. It was my choice. I've been living in your city for 3 years, and I've never asked my parents for money. I make my own living. It's not much, but I'm sure that in the future my work will be appreciated, and I'll be able to live well. Okay, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. Don't mind me. Stephen, I've noticed that the 2.5 hours we spend together, I'm the only one talking. Can you please tell me something about yourself? Stephen agreed. But did he have a choice? The young man said that since childhood he had been drawn to knowledge, that his father had accustomed him to books, and now he could not spend a single evening without reading. He did not talk about the fact that everything was not smooth in his family. Emily didn't need to know that Stephen's parents were divorced and his mother couldn't stand his father. And she certainly didn't need to learn that her mother's main job, in her opinion, was to arrange for her son's matchmaking and marriage. The young teacher was quickly going over in her head the topics on which to talk. When there were pauses, Emily tried to ask leading questions on topics of interest to her. It was by chance that she learned that Stephen had decided to follow in his father's footsteps. It turned out that Christopher was known even in the city where the girl came from. She was pleasantly surprised, as she had read in the newspaper's interviews with the outstanding engineer. She especially liked Christopher's articles on various subjects. Stephen was very much surprised that Emily was aware of who his father was. It turned out that she even knew that Christopher and Camille were divorced. Stephen's dad had mentioned it in passing in some interview. At some point, the young teacher felt an irresistible urge to take the girl's hand, but he couldn't afford it, as they had to observe the elementary subordination. To be honest, he was a little shaken at the thought that they might be seen by students or professors from the institute. If they thought something untoward was going on, Stephen would lose his job. It was obvious to Emily that she was very eager to touch the young man. She tried to touch him in every possible way, supposedly by accident. In the coffee shop, the young people spent another hour and a half. It was already about 23 o'clock on the clock. Stephen said that the time had passed catastrophically unnoticed and suggested Emily to go away. Yes, you're probably right. But Stephen, don't you know it's etiquette for a young man to walk a girl home? What? Oh yes, but you see, Emily, it's only permissible if there are romantic feelings between a man and a woman. And you don't. At that moment, Stephen was lost. Never before in his life had a girl behaved so openly in his presence. Where had he ever seen a woman declare all her desires at the first meeting? He didn't know what to do in this situation. He wanted very much to walk Emily home. But this prim pedantry prevented him from agreeing to this adventure. Where do you live? It's not far. Come along. To his surprise, the young man obeyed Emily. When they left the park, they turned into Dark Lane. The girl reached timidly with her fingers for Stephen's hand. To say that he was discouraged was like saying nothing. His hand remained unmoved while Emily's fingers gently stroked his. At the same time, they did not speak, walked in silence. Words were unnecessary here. Emily's heart was beating in a frantic rhythm. She had never acted so unbridled in her life. She felt as if she were scaring the young teacher away from her. But she didn't want that. She wanted to get closer to him. A wave of passion and attraction was washing over her. She became a hostage to her heart. Emily was willing to do anything to make Stephen respond to her actions. What scared her most in life was rejection. Rejection of her. The girl, like Stephen, had never been in a serious relationship. It seemed to her, too, that the men around her thought more of their animal instincts. Intimacy with the opposite sex was intimidating. But things were different with this guy. Stephen was still walking the same way, frozen. Fear. Only fear kept him from responding to Emily's actions. It was hard for him to explain where the feeling came from and what exactly he was afraid of. It could have been misunderstanding from the mother of the people around him, coworkers and students. Yes, it could have been judgment from the outside that he would not want to experience. Meanwhile, Emily's actions became more confident. She went the bank. The girl decided that she had nothing to lose, and it was now that everything should be decided. If the young and attractive teacher did not respond to her already far from timid actions, she would let him go. It was clear from the student's fingers what she wanted. Stephen stopped squeezing her hand, whereupon his fingers tangled with Emily's slender, neat fingers. This was the moment when the young people realized that they cared about each other. Stephen, are you comfortable? Yes, but I'm not. Emily, why not? I think our atmosphere would be more favorable if we switched to you. I don't know. Do you think it's appropriate? After all, We're faculty. Student. Yes, it is. But we're not in lecture. We're not in counseling. We're actually on a date. I thought we were meeting to get to know each other. We are. But we originally met because we have some warm feelings for each other that shouldn't be between a teacher and a student. Stephen was lying to himself when he talked about not feeling anything for Emily. His heart and body spoke of something else. This was the only girl he was comfortable with, and he had decided to risk his relationship with his mother, work in science, and teaching. At that very moment, he didn't care about anything but this young and awe-inspiring creature holding his hand. No longer did the young people address each other in you. Their hands clasped each other more tightly, and when Stephen took Emily home, he did not want to let her go. Emily felt the same way, and she wanted very much to invite Stephen to her house. But the fear that the young man would misunderstand her took over. When they reached the entrance, they stopped. Emily, without letting go of his hand, turned to the boy. For several minutes, they stared into each other's eyes. It was hard to tell what they saw in them. It's not for nothing they say that the eyes are the mirror of the soul. Stephen still stood in confusion. He didn't know what to do next. They should have said goodbye a long time ago, gone their separate ways. But the girl and the man looked into each other's eyes and held hands without a break. At some point, Emily realized that she had to act first. She stood on her tiptoes a little and reached for Stephen's face. At that moment, his brain shut down. He reflexively reached up, and their lips met. At first, it was a gentle, childlike kiss, but with each passing second, the passion increased, and their lips greedily embraced each other. Tums unapologetically entered another space, exploring the terrain. When the kiss ended, Stephen said it was getting late. He hugged Emily goodbye, and they parted. The young man lived not far from the student. On the way home, he was in high spirits. Had Stephen met someone he was ready to go on with? How can it be that two people with the same interests, views on life met only now? Let's be honest, it wasn't the best of circumstances. But Stephen waved goodbye to everything, just to feel happy for a moment. As he approached the entrance, he noticed a girl standing under the visor. It was a strange phenomenon, as it was already approaching 0 o'clock. As he took a few more steps closer, he saw Jenna standing near the door. "Jenna, hello. What are you doing here?" "Oh, Stephen, you don't know how long I've been waiting here for you. I was in the neighborhood. I thought I'd come to visit, but there was no one home, so I thought I'd wait for you here." The young man was very much surprised. If someone passes by the house and decides to visit, and there is no one there, he just turns around and leaves. But why did she stay here? Why is she waiting for him? "How long have you been waiting for me?" "You know, I thought it hadn't been more than half an hour, but it's been almost 2 o'clock. 200 waiting. You really must have something going on." "No, I just really wanted to see you." "I'm honored." "Thank you." Stephen felt uncomfortable. He realized he liked Jenna, but he didn't feel the same way. "So are we just gonna stand here like this?" "You will." "Jenna, it's too late. I have to check the students' test papers. I promised I'd announce their results tomorrow. Perhaps you should go home." "I'm sorry you waited so long for me." "Stephen, but I think they won't be offended if you don't announce the grades. If you tell them that you spent that time with a pretty girl you like, they'll understand your position and take it all in stride." "Yeah, except I'd be lying." "What do you mean?" "Jenna, I'm sorry. You're a very nice girl, aren't you? But under the circumstances, if you and I had met without the help of our parents, maybe something would have happened between us. But under these circumstances, there can't be any relationship between us. I can't say I don't like you. I like you, but as a friend. A friend is just a friend. Think about it. We can have a beautiful family. We're not the last people in this town. We're very promising. If we get married, we'll go abroad together, and they'll take good engineers." "Jenna, wait, we haven't even been on a date yet. That's unnecessary. We're modern people living in the 21st century. No, I'm sorry. I just want to get this conversation over with as soon as possible. If my mom promised you something, you can have it. Don't bring me into this. I'm going home now. You call a cab and leave. Please don't ever come here again." After these words, Stephen turned away and entered the entrance, going up to his floor. His thoughts stayed in his head. He had never been so hard on other people before. Always went along to get along, but not this time. And he realized why things were happening this way. It's Emily's fault, or rather, it was her fault for what she had done to his heart and head. Entering the apartment, Stephen was surprised. The TV was on and his mom was lying on the couch. "Mom, hi, I'm home." "Oh, Stephen, I've been waiting for you for so long. Where have you been?" "Oh, wait, let me guess. You were with Jenna. How was the date?" "I don't know who Jenna is." "What date?" "You weren't with her. Where were you? Did you even see the time?" "You don't care if your mom's at home worrying. You were worried sick when you thought I was with Jenna. That's why you were so excited to see me." "Oh, I see. I guess Jenna didn't wait for you." "How do you know she waited for me?" "Someone rang the doorbell while you were out. I went over, looked through the peephole, saw Jenna there. To be honest, at first I didn't want to open the door because I wasn't at my best. But the girl was very persistent. Eventually, I let her into the apartment, and we talked. She said she really wanted to see you, and that she liked you. To be honest, I was really excited, because, as I said before, this is a very good match for your future wife." "Mom, let's just leave it at that. What happened next?" "Well, I told her you were due back from school soon. I suggested that she wait for you downstairs. I thought when you saw her, you'd be pleased. But apparently I miscalculated. Yes, I sent her away and asked her never to come here again." "What? How dare you? Do you realize whose daughter she is? She'll never forgive you after that." "Stephen, who needs you at your age? Whoever needs you, needs you." "I don't get it." "With your eyebrows together?" Camille asked. "Can I ask you more about that?" Stephen decided to tell his mom the truth. Maybe then she would leave him alone. The young man told Camille that a girl had come into his life. They have many common interests and feel an irresistible attraction to each other. During the heightened narrative, Camille's face was constantly changing. Such colorful emotions that changed every minute he had never seen before. He did not know how his mother would react to all this. He didn't feel like fighting. However, the feeling of dread that lodged in his chest said otherwise. His stomach grumbled as if he hadn't eaten in 3 days. After listening to Stephen, Camille threw her hands up in the air and threw a real tantrum. It had to be admitted that she had gotten into the wrong school at the wrong time. She should definitely have tried her luck in the acting department. Camille was the person for whom Oscar cried. And she cried. She screamed. She was silent. She pretended to gasp. She was trying to get it into Stephen's head that this was his biggest mistake in life. After all he had done, he would not be forgiven by the young girl and her parents. The mother was trying to prove to her son that you can't be so irresponsible with life. Do you understand? I can see it in your eyes. Stephen, a few years ago, you chose your profession responsibly. You thought through all your options. Your specialty is one of the most promising. Not as promising as a programmer, of course, but still you chose it yourself. I'm sure you were guided not by your heart, but by your brain. You should do the same with choosing a future wife. What are you doing, son? You chased away such a beautiful girl, and instead walks with some frame who came from a neighboring town. Don't you realize she's trying to get a job here on your dime? At our expense. Stephen's got his wits about him. Even though Stephen hadn't taken his mother's words seriously for a long time, for some reason he thought about what she had said now. Because right now, Camille could be right. He didn't know anything about Emily. Why was she so keenly interested in a young teacher? Yes, she probably just wants to find a free place to live, earn an automatic in electrical engineering. No, this is a pure and sincere person. She can't do that. Or can she? The scandal went on for no more than another 10 minutes. At some point, Stephen realized that he had reached an impasse. He needed to think it over, to make the right decision. But he didn't know who to ask. What exactly would be considered the right decision? In his head, the thoughts scattered smoothly in different directions formed a void. Silence. Stephen fell asleep. The next day, when Stephen woke up, he found that his throat was sore. On top of that, his temperature was elevated to 38.5. His whole body ached, as if he had been ponderously beaten all night. One thing was clear. He would not be going to work today. At first he was upset because he wouldn't be seeing Emily. Then he decided that it was a good opportunity to think things over properly and make the right decision. He called the department chair, alerted the dean, and made an appointment with the doctor. Stephen realized that the doctor would definitely give him a sick leave, which would last at least 10 days. Yes, that would be enough time. Camille was not at home. She had gone somewhere early in the morning, probably to the market for fresh vegetables. He went to the pharmacy to buy some medicine. It was not far from his house, literally 30 meters away. When Stephen was on his way to the entrance, he looked up and saw Emily near the steps. He wasn't surprised. He just didn't have the energy for it. He didn't understand why the women were following him. Why had Emily come here? The girl stood in a light floral dress just above the knee. On her shoulder was a pink bag, and in her hands a branded bag from the store, in which oranges were visible. Stephen, hi. How are you? I was really freaked out today when Jack showed up for steam instead of you. I thought something serious had happened. I ran to the department, but the secretary said you were ill. I hope it's nothing serious. Hello, Emily. Well, I don't know how serious it is, but I have a sore throat. It's a lousy condition, of course. Why did you come here? What do you mean? To check on you, to give you an orange so you can get vitamins and get well soon. I missed you. At that moment, the girl raised her eyes to Stephen a few times, playfully clapped her eyelashes, and pouted her lips. Emily, you forgive me, but what are you apologizing for again? I really don't have the energy. I don't know what happened yesterday. I've never been through anything like this before in my life, so I need time to think. Think about what? Emily asked in surprise. I'd like to take charge of yesterday's situation. Why did that happen? Why do I have these feelings for you? Why are you so open with me? Why are you so assertive after all? These are the kind of questions that are sitting in my head right now. You know, there must be a catch, but I can't see it. You attract me like a magnet. I've never had that in my life. I'll tell you the truth. I'd like to hold your hands for the rest of my life and never let go. It's like you've been stealing from me. If we lived 300 years ago, I'd really think you were engaging in hostile behavior. What are you talking about? Tears began to well up in Emily's eyes. She could no longer keep a steady, calm voice. She was shaking. What fight? I opened up to you. I gave you the key to my heart. Did you use it? Entered the hearts. Now you want to break it. No, Emily, I'm just not familiar with this whole thing. I'm scared, to be honest. Stephen wouldn't tell the girl that her mother was against their relationship. He didn't think it was information that deserved her attention. They looked at each other in silence for a few minutes. Stephen was pained to see the tears in Emily's eyes. He stretched his arms forward and spread them slightly apart, letting the girl know that he was ready to hug her. She instantly responded to his call, snuggled against his chest, and catted his neck with her arms. It so happened that Emily had received a stab in the heart in 15 minutes, and then a fit of tenderness and revelation from Stephen. She knew what he was talking about. After all, she had experienced the same thing. Despite this, she truly believed that the feeling that was spilling inside of her was the truest love. This little conversation with Emily helped Stephen forget the tantrum his mother had thrown. There was no going back to that conversation. Apparently, she was confident that her son had listened to her. The young man was on sick leave for 10 days. His mom was with him only in the evenings. During the day, Stephen was visited by Emily, who told him news from the Institute local gossip and also shared impressions of the lectures that Jack held. One of the days, Camille was at work. Emily, as always, after studying, approached the entrance of Stephen. The young man was waiting for her at the same time every day. They didn't need to call each other. They felt each other. Seeing a familiar silhouette approaching in the window, Stephen ran out of the apartment, ran up the stairs, came out of the entrance exactly at the moment when Emily was 3 meters away from him. The girl joyfully pounced on Stephen, kissed his cheeks, eyes, nose, smoothly moving to his lips. While Stephen was on sick leave, he didn't want them to kiss, afraid of infecting Emily. But she didn't care. She confirmed that contagion doesn't stick to advance. Afterwards, she laughed and pounced on his lips as if she hadn't seen them in forever. During the passionate kiss, the young people did not notice anything around them. The gray cityscape turned into the natural world always becomes much brighter when a loved one is near us. Yes, it was the beloved Stephen who confessed his feelings to Emily on the 3rd day of the hospital stay. This fact did not shock her. She, of course, reciprocated his feelings. Even though they had only known each other for a week, both of them were sure that this love was for life, and they wanted to get married as soon as possible. Emily was already prepared for the fact that the proposal would be made not by Stephen to her, but by her to him. But still, she was waiting for a man to take that step. Camille spent a lot of time at work, tried to lead a social life, but that day she was ashamed of the fact that at home there is a sick son who needs her care, and she instead has fun with girlfriends. After quickly saying goodbye, the woman gathered all her things. She ran to the store to buy groceries to prepare a delicious dinner. She wanted to give her son a little feast. She hurried home with all her legs, and when she wrapped up in her yard, she saw that under the driveway young people hugging, kissing. Wow, they couldn't find any other place. How are people supposed to walk? She did not want to scandalize, as she was in a good mood, and decided to make a simple remark. "Guys, why are you standing here in broad daylight in full view of everyone?" Camille said without raising her eyes, and ran into the entrance. "Mom, meet Emily." Camille was dumbfounded. She thought she had imagined it. Standing there, afraid to turn around, she couldn't believe it. After all, her son was sick, should be lying in bed waiting for her. "Mom," without letting go of Emily's embrace, repeated Stephen. "Why aren't you in bed?" Stephen released his lover from his embrace, walked up to his mother, took her by the elbow, and took her aside. "I don't understand. What kind of concerts are these? What do you allow yourself? I'm introducing you to a dear person, and you act like she's not even there. How am I supposed to act? Should I welcome her with open arms? Who is she? She's nobody. Look at the way the girl looks. Would an intelligent person wear such a vulgar dress? And what's that on her head? It's horrible. Where did you find her? Did you pick her up like a slit in a garbage dump?" After these words, Stephen was overcome by a wave of rage. No one dare speak of his favorite person in such a tone. His hand twitched, barely missed. The young man came to his senses. Raising a hand on his mother is not allowed, and in general on anyone. Stephen turned around and walked towards Emily. His face had never looked so ugly with anger. Emily was frightened. Stepping up close, Stephen grabbed the girl's arm so that she shrieked a little. The reaction was one of fear and pain. His hand clenched tighter. The guy didn't see anyone or anything around him. Only when Emily started to cry did he abruptly let her go. I'm sorry, honey. I didn't mean to." The girl broke into sobs, covering her face with her hands. No one had ever treated her like this before. She didn't understand why it had happened. After all, she had done nothing wrong. Tears were flowing not only because Stephen had grabbed her and hurt her, but also because of Camille's reaction. "Honey, please don't cry. I'm sorry I hurt you. I didn't know what I was doing. She just made me angry," Stephen said, pointing in the direction where his mother was standing. "Why is she angry without stopping to cry?" asked Emily. "I don't know. She doesn't need an excuse to turn into Miguel." Stephen cradled Emily, kissed the top of her head. There was a lump in my throat again, this guilt that wouldn't let up. Her heartbeat quickened with anxiety. Nausea kicked in. The young man was determined. "Sweetheart, it's going to be all right. I'll do everything I can to make us happy. We just have to wait a little longer. Do you believe me?" "I do, darling. I do." The lovers stayed together for about another hour. After that, Stephen saw the girl off and went home to talk to his mom and start forging his own happiness. God, I really am a mama's boy. I'm almost 30 years old, and I still haven't learned to live on my own, to make my own decisions. I have to figure out something to make my girl happy, to make me happy. After all, how to talk to her mother. I have no idea what language I can use to convey my thoughts to her. Doesn't she want her son to be happy? Every mother wants that. She just doesn't understand me because we haven't talked enough. I just need to spend a nice evening with her. Stephen thought that today he could settle the relationship with his mother, which had not been formed for many years, to immediately flush her zamomu. So to speak, the young man on the way home stopped by the flower store. On the shelves of the refrigerator were dozens of vases with a variety of flowers. But Camille's most favorite plants were chrysanthemums. There was no preference of any kind for the color. At first, Stephen wanted to collect all varieties of these flowers in a bouquet, but thought that it would look like something defiant. Mom's nervous system was already upset. Together with the salesman, they chose chrysanthemums in bed colors. The bouquet was chic and expensive, but Stephen spared no expense. It was for his beloved mom. To be more precise, it's for his carefree future. The bouquet was just under 1 meter in diameter. When Stephen saw it, he thought he couldn't carry it home on his own. But it was necessary to walk less than 500 meters. Entering the entrance, the young man stopped and leaned against the wall. His arms were tired, his back grimaced. There was not much left to do. Gathering all the strength in a heap, Stephen made one last dash. The door to the apartment was locked. It was impossible to hold the keys. It was impossible to reach, as he held the bouquet with both hands. I had to knock. The choice fell on his foot, gently hitting the door a few times. Stephen froze in anticipation of footsteps not being heard. Tried again. Silence. With all his might, hitting the door, he heard quick footsteps. "What on earth is going on?" mumbled Camille as he ran to the door and turned the lock. "Why are you banging like that? Are you out of your mind?" Oops, when the door opened, she saw a huge bouquet of her favorite flowers. "What's that? Who is it?" Blurry smiles, asked the woman. "It's for you, Mom. I tried and picked the best flowers for you. We had an unpleasant conversation this afternoon. You were in a bad mood. I thought I'd make it better for you. Did it work? I'm glad you came to your senses and admitted you were wrong." "Mom, that's not what I meant. Why was I wrong? Let's go into the kitchen and have some tea. Put the flowers in the vase." Camille grabbed the bouquet and went into the hall with it. There, among the variety of you, tried to choose the one in which the bouquet would look more advantageous. Meanwhile, Sturhenna's head was busy thinking about how to convince his mother to leave him alone. It seemed impossible, but he wasn't going to give up. Dialogues were turning in his head, which by all the rules of life would never happen. Even if you think of many variants of the event, it will still turn out something you did not count on. "Oh, son, that's good. You made your mom happy, of course. Thank you so much. My favorite colors and shades are so beautiful. After all, a mother is never wrong. I always said you had good taste. It's just that after I saw your mom, I started to doubt you. But I figured it was just a temporary blur." "Mom, stop calling love a blur." "What love? What do you know about love? You're almost 30 years old, but you've never had a girlfriend. How do you know?" "Oh, I'm sorry." Camille shrieked and threw her hands up in the air. "Did you sit in your room all day, or did you disappear to the institute? And where did you hide it if you had it under your desk, under your bed?" "Okay, everybody, let's stop this pointless conversation. I wanted to talk to you about my relationship with Emily." "Oh my God, what relationship with Emily?" "Please, it's just a casual attraction." Son, now, after a couple nights together, you'll forget her as the most interesting book you have on your bottom shelf, floor-level shelves. You won't even lose dust in there. That's how it's gonna be with this sucker. No, you listen to me. You know, I've never felt what I'm feeling right now in my life. No girl has ever captured my attention and captured my mind and my heart. You see, she and I are soulmates. We had a lot in common. A love of art, books, animals. Can you understand what I'm saying? I'm asking you to stop following my every move and let me start living on my own. If you are afraid that I don't make mistakes, then don't worry. They will be my mistakes that I will learn from. You've hardly lived the life your grandmother told you to live. As far as I remember from your childhood, you were always willful, and never in your life did you do as your grandmother told you. You did the opposite. Even when you knew it wouldn't end well, you did it out of spite. Just think about the time I was at my grandmother's house this weekend. And when I met you, she said I was probably allergic to citrus fruits. You screamed that it wasn't true. And the rash that formed on me is common. That same evening, you fed me oranges. And 2 o'clock later, I was in the hospital with a pharmacy receipt. That's not normal. But you thought you did the right thing, because you had to see if Granny was right or not. Camille listened and stared intently into Stephen's eyes. She couldn't believe that her son remembered this moment in his life, because he was only 4 years old. And after being discharged from the hospital, no one ever brought up the situation. And even now, my mom didn't feel guilty. It was a good thing after all. What else does he need? What kind of independence can we talk about if Stephen did not live a day without his mom? He even refused to go to camps because he was afraid of a long separation from his mother. Stephen continued his monologue, trying to make many arguments for the fact that he was ready to get off the tit and go into life without his mom. Camille realized that the son was serious. The usual methods of influencing him would not work. There was no point in throwing another tantrum. A more cunning plan could have been devised. Stephen was more loyal to his mother when she spoke in a calm and affirmative tone. But even that was not enough now. If she kept talking about her son's failure as an independent man, he would become hysterical, and God forbid, he would get angry and leave home. Such a turn of events she did not survive, having listened to her son to the end. The mother remained silent for a few minutes, trying to digest what he was trying to convey to her. Stephen, you're probably right. What's right? You're a grown man who needs to get out of your parents' house and start building your life brick by brick. Stephen was stunned. He was preparing for the fact that his mother will seize another scandal, will argue that he cannot live without her, and that he needed a wife. But to say that Camille would agree with her son's words, no one could expect that. He looked at her out of the corner of his eye, groped his hand several times to make sure it wasn't a dream. The young man rushed from his seat, hugging his mother. The woman answered him gently, hugging and stroking her son. Only I ask you for one thing. Mother, I will try to do what you ask. There is nothing terrifying in my request. You see, I'm used to you always being at home, putting up with the enormous amount of books that keeps increasing. I can't imagine coming home from work tomorrow, and the house will be empty, with neither you nor your things in it. I wouldn't survive that. All I ask is that you don't rush into moving. Stay with me a little longer. This mother's request was out of Stephen's plans. He was really going to look for a nice apartment tonight, among the ones for rent. He wanted to drive around in the morning, see what was available. Then tonight he'd pack up his things and move in. After that, he'd like to go after Emily and ask her to move in with him. But Mom was partly right about something. She carried him for 9 months under her heart for 29 years, raising him, feeding him, caring for him. If he did that, her feelings would probably be comparable to what women feel when they lose their children. Okay, Mom, I'll do what you're asking me to do. I just ask that this transition not take months. The most I can offer you is a few weeks. I'm fine with that. Son, thank you. Although Camille agreed with everything that had been said, she had no intention of stopping. It was early in the morning when Stephen was asleep. She took his phone, found his lover's phone number, wrote it down in her notebook. Toward lunchtime, she decided to call. "Hello." She heard a fragile female voice on the other end of the line. "Smith. Emily." "Yes. Hi, this is Camille, Stephen's mom. I'd like to meet you today." "Something's happened to Stephen?" the girl asked me worriedly. "No, he's sleeping fine. He probably had a fever last night, couldn't sleep. And if he had followed the bed rest that the doctor said, he would have recovered by now." "Oh well, that's not what I'm talking about. When can you honor me with your presence? I'm out of class in half an hour. We can meet outside the institute. There's a coffee shop with great coffee." "Oh, that's great. I'll be there in 5 minutes." When Emily finished talking, I noticed that she was feeling a little heavy. The feeling of unease was growing by the second. After what Camille had done in the yard yesterday, the girl could not expect her to be kind. What if Stephen had talked to her and the woman had decided to get to know her better to understand her son's choice? Yeah, I guess she did. It's weird, but why am I so excited? Although it can be considered the first acquaintance with the future mother-in-law, no daughter-in-law has ever been completely calm before this event. I guess it's a normal feeling. Emily returned to the classroom, where the class was held, began to absorb what was written on the teachers' websites. Thoughts did not leave her head. It was impossible to concentrate. No matter how hard the girl tried to concentrate, everything was in vain. She resigned herself to her condition and just stared at the clock, waiting for the end of the class. After the bell rang, the instructor dismissed the students. Emily leisurely headed towards the exit. She did not want to hurry because the feeling of anxiety had already grown to universal proportions. The way to the cafe, which was located in the park, 200 meters from the institute, took forever. There she saw the familiar silhouette of a middle-aged lady. Yes, it was her. Maybe it's not too late to cancel. If I go now and leave before she saw me, it could be said that I was detained after the lecture. While Emily was turning an escape plan in her head, Camille turned around and saw her. The girl stood there like a dumbfounded and didn't understand what she should do, where to run to. Maybe she hadn't noticed her yet. The woman gracefully raised her hand and waved everything. There were no more options. If she ran away now, it would mean she would completely ruin her relationship with her lover's mom. Emily shifted with difficulty. Her legs were leaden. Every step was like torture. When the girl came close, it felt as if she was about to faint. "Hello, Emily." "Hello, Camille." Stammering, the girl replied. "Let's go to the cafe." They were both silent until they sat down at a table. After ordering, the woman spoke. "Emily, you know, I'm very glad that my son has you. I honestly thought he was more interested in the book world than the real world. I don't know what's so special about you, but I'm happy he's starting to live. But all people are unique and beautiful in their own way. Some people can't understand another person's choices. Yeah, you're right. You must be able to do something my son never dreamed of before," Camille said with a wry smile. Emily felt uncomfortable. How dare this woman say such things to her? She was clearly alluding to sex and everything that went with it. The snag was that the young people had nothing going on yet. Yes, that's what happens in the modern world when a woman doesn't jump on a man in the first hour of meeting him. It was more than that. "Camille, I'm sorry, but it's indecent to talk about such things. And if it bothers you that much, yes, I care a great deal." Stephen's mother started to raise her voice. "There was nothing going on between me and Stephen yet." "Yeah, but all the better." "What do you mean?" "That he won't be in so much pain after the breakup. You see, my dear, if there's been intimacy between young people, there's a special bond between them. I'm sorry, after what breakup?" "What are you talking about?" "That's what I called you here to talk to you about. Honey, you're not our kind of girl. I figured you out when I first heard about you, and when I saw you, all my fears were confirmed. Stephen is the son of a great, not afraid of this word, engineer known not only in Russia, but in many countries of the world. He's an intelligent boy, you know. And now look at yourself." At that moment, Emily turned her head to the right. There on the wall was a mirror. She looked at her reflection, saw exactly what she had seen an hour and a half ago. Maybe her mascara was running. I don't think so. "Camille, I look at myself in the mirror 100 times a day. I don't see any signs of ugliness, sty, or inferiority. Appearance. I'm wearing a flowered dress on my head. What are you? A milkmaid? I guess I'm guessing. Before you went to college, by some miracle you ate cows in your village." "No, I came from a regional town," Emily replied dryly. "What, you didn't go to school in the region? You decided to come to a small town. What is that nonsense?" "Yes, I did. I wanted to get out of my parents' house, so I came here." "Are you even telling the truth?" "I'm telling the truth. Why would I open up to someone I don't know very well? Plus, I'm happy with the way I look, just like your son." "Oh, let's drop it. You're the one who's stupid. I'll continue, if you don't mind. You see, Stephen was only interested in you until he took you to bed. I'm sure that after he's had a few times of getting what he dreams of, all his made-up feelings, and vaporized, he won't need you. No one knows a child as well as his mother who has lived under the same roof with him all his life. Emily, I understand why you chose my son. He deserves the attention of the best women. Not that you're on that list, but still." Emily sat there, not moving. The coffee had gone cold. She couldn't get a word in edgewise. She did not understand how from the mouth of such a well-mannered woman, at first glance, could fly such disgusting words that she allowed herself. Why had she descended almost to direct insults? These questions lingered in her mind. She had no idea what was going on right now. Meanwhile, Camille continued her tirade. "I'm sorry your plan didn't work out, but I must confess that Stephen already has a fiancée. But he's been very upset with her because of you. Well, I'm willing to bend at the knees to beg her forgiveness. His future is firmly entwined with the kitten, not you. Just suck it up and let him go. Just disappear. I realize that's impossible because he's your teacher. But think of something. I hope the villagers are logical and you'll make the right decision." After these words, Camille elegantly got up from the table, carefully threw her coat on her shoulders, and left. Emily sat there, hardly breathing. What was that? And what am I supposed to do after that? The girl felt as if she had been doused in mud from head to toe. What is there to say? According to Stephen's mother, she was the dirt that could not be washed away. The woman considered her son's relationship with the girl as something criminal and ugly. I think it would stigmatize the boy for the rest of his life. Emily realized one thing: Stephen had a strong bond with his mother. Tears sprang from her eyes and wouldn't stop flowing. She didn't understand why the woman didn't accept her. She didn't even ask who her father and mother were, nor did she inquire about her reason for moving to the small town. As much as it hurt Emily, she had to make a difficult decision. The next day, Stephen woke up early in the morning, went to the bread store to get a loaf to please herself and her mother, delicious breakfast sandwiches. On his way back, he decided to check the mail. To his surprise, there was a letter there. It was unmarked, only in the middle of the envelope. One word, Stephen, was written in calligraphic handwriting. He couldn't help himself and tore the envelope open on the spot. It contained a letter from Emily. "Hello, Stephen. I hope you are almost recovered. I'm sorry I didn't come by to check on you. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hold back and shed tears on your t-shirt. I won't beat around the bush. Oh, around. I have to tell you that I'm leaving for my house at 500 hours today. It's an emergency. We need to end our relationship. I really do love you very much. I've never been so attracted to anyone before. I wondered why we hadn't met sooner. I came to the conclusion that it was the age difference, which, by the way, I didn't feel at all. It's just that when you were a young guy, I was on the potty. The day before, your mom called me and asked me to meet you. I said yes. If I'd known how this would turn out, I never would have agreed to it in my life. I've been dragged through the mud. I don't think I'll be able to feel normal for months. Camille tells me you already have a fiancé. I'll be honest, I hate to hear it from a stranger. She said I wasn't worthy of you. Well, so be it. Your mom thinks I was signed for self-interest. When I started a relationship with you, it was like I had my eye on your apartment. Honey, I'm gonna have to lay it all on the line. I didn't say anything about Camille last night because she was impossible to interrupt. I have a full family: Mom, Dad, me, and my sister. Mom works as a director of the best high school in the region. My sister studies at the same lyceum. My daddy is a regular governor. I think if your mom knew that, I'd be the best match she's got for you. It's my dad's status that made him hard on me. Everyone there knows me by sight. Since our family photos are in the papers, so I decided to move to your town to be more free. But even there was a man who broke my wings. So I'd rather go back home. It hurts to say goodbye to you, but I don't see any other way out. I hope you can get away from your mother and make a life for yourself. Choose your own wife, job, and home. I wish you all the best. I hope you'll remember me with a kind word. I only ask one thing. Don't look for me. Don't try. I don't want us to have anything to do with each other. I'm not ready to build a family with a man and his mother. They shouldn't be on the same level. I still love you. Your fox on Emily. Stephen was devastated. While he was reading the letter, he didn't notice the button fall out of his hands and onto the coffee tile in the entryway. He didn't bother picking it up, clutching the letter in his hands, headed for his apartment. His mom was still asleep. He needed to think it over. The guy was very hurt. He did not expect such a turn of fate. He could not think that he and Emily would ever part. Only death could separate them. But things turned out very differently. Of course, he looked for someone to blame. In his opinion, it was both Emily and Camille. Mother had insolently meddled in their relationship, and Emily had betrayed him. Yes, she had betrayed him, because she could have told him who she was in the first place. Even though Stephen didn't care, it was important to his mother. If she had immediately found out who her father was, she would not have opposed their relationship at all. It wasn't until he was 30 that a guy got his heart broken for the first time. He realized it wasn't the only time. In his lifetime, it would be. But to minimize the risk, he'd have to make up his mind. Getting away from Camille wasn't easy. I have to move out right now. Full of determination, Stephen got up from the couch, went to the storage room where the suitcases were kept. He packed only the most necessary things and left his parents' house for nowhere. He decided that he would check into the first apartment he could find today. And if it didn't work out, he would temporarily move in with his father, who was on a business trip. Camille woke up half an hour later. After Stephen had left, there was a pleasant aroma of fried eggs in the apartment, the unfinished breakfast that the young man was preparing. Stephen tried to shout to her son, the woman. No one answered. She assumed the young man had gone to get bread and went into the kitchen to make coffee on the bar. Lying crumpled was a piece of paper. As she got closer, she realized it was a letter. Yes, reading other people's letters was not allowed. But Camille did not hold back. At first, there was a wide smile on her face. She was satisfied that she was able to achieve what she wanted. But near the end of the letter, her emotions changed. It was shock mixed with sadness. When she reached the end, Camille realized how much she had miscalculated. Emily was a willful girl, and she would never forgive a woman, no matter how much she begged, even if she got down on her knees. It wasn't until later that she realized she'd lost something important. She had lost her son. It was clear that he had left home. The woman rushed to the phone to dial him, but the caller was out of range. Tears flowed from her eyes. Camille had always been afraid that Stephen would move out on her. She had expected to live with him forever, even when he got married. However, things had turned out very differently. She was left alone and with nothing, like an old woman at a broken trough.